You're strapped in a boat cruising down the Amazon River with the sun scorching hot. As you check out your map, your boat starts rocking back and forth. The water is starting to get more intense, so you hang on for dear life. You tuck your map in your pocket and try to take control of your boat. You strike some jagged rocks and duck low to avoid tree branches. Your boat strikes a large rock out of nowhere and capsizes. You're swimming in the murky green water. While you're trying your best to get ashore, your boat gets washed away. Underneath the water lies a whole new world of bizarre and dangerous animals. Candiru fish are snake-like creatures that can grow up to 16 inches long. Arapimus can weigh more than an adult male and are taller than most basketball players. They're the biggest freshwater fish in South America. They have a hybrid gill system that forces them to pop up to the surface every 5 to 15 minutes to breathe in oxygen for their large swim bladder. You swim out of the raging water and dry yourself off. Oh no, your map is completely soaked. There's no way you can get to your destination without it. You venture into the thick rainforest, shoving the branches and leaves away. As you get deeper, you notice something on a tree. It's barely moving, but it's got sharp claws and a raggedy coat. It stretches its arm to another branch and tries to pull itself up, ever so slowly. Sloths sleep more than half their days and only head down from trees once a week. They're so motionless, they sometimes grow algae and moss on their fur. The rainforest gets denser with each step until there's barely any sunlight illuminating the path in front of you. You notice a figure following you. With every branch you step on, you can hear a faint sound right next to you creeping around. You start walking a bit faster, and the sound catches up with you. You make it out of the dense part and tread along a narrow path until you reach a cliff. You can't walk normally here, so you pin against the wall and walk sideways to cross the hills. You slowly move across with the river 30 feet below you. You move your right foot, and some rocks fall into the river. You keep going and misstep. You're about to fall, but you hold on to a large tree branch and pull yourself up. You notice a couple of colorful poison frogs inches away from your fingers. Touching any of these frogs can be extremely dangerous and harmful, despite their amazing color patterns. The golden poison frog is one of the most poisonous animals in the world. One of them hops right next to you, so you let go of the branch and fall back in the river. The river is washing you down until you reach a calm current. Underneath you is a swarm of piranhas swimming with their sharp teeth. The red color on their skin is unmistakable, so you swim off like an Olympic athlete. Piranhas will eat anything that gets in their way, no matter the size. You grip onto a log and climb up a small rock to catch your breath. There's a huge electric eel underneath the rock. Despite their name, they're more related to catfish than eels. They use their powerful 600 volts of electricity to defend themselves and catch food. You're stuck, unless you're like the common basilisk that can run on the water like a jet ski. These incredible lizards have special webbing on their toes and can run the distance of a basketball court. You hop on a bunch of rocks until you reach the land. You continue walking along the riverbank until you come across a moving rock. You rub your eyes and see it moving again. It's a dinosaur-looking turtle that resembles a crocodile with armor. The mata mata is a freshwater turtle that disguises itself with its surroundings to catch prey. Their heads stretch longer than their bodies. You shimmy your way past it and continue. You head back into the rainforest and find a spot to rest. Wait, there are giant ants everywhere. They're the biggest ants in the world and can produce one of the most painful stings out there, even comparable to a wasp's sting. You immediately get up and find another place to rest. As you continue walking along, you notice the same feeling of something following you. You can hear some leaves rustling, but it's getting dark and there's no way of telling. You find a nice little spot to build a campfire and catch some Z's. But in the Amazon, everything is a threat, except for those cute capybaras wandering around. They live in groups next to water sources. They're also the biggest rodents in the world. You don't need to worry about them if you're stuck in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. Suddenly, you feel something slithering up next to you. You look down and see a massive green anaconda just about to constrict you. They are the heaviest snakes in the world and can grow up to 20 feet long and have a huge appetite. You get up and sprint your way out of there. All right, you found a decent cave to crash in. It's daytime again, and you're still alive. You continue walking along the rainforest. You were able to find some breakfast to boost your energy for the rest of the day. You spot something on a tree that looks like a branch, but it's actually a potu, a master of disguise that can spend days motionless on broken tree branches. These bizarre birds use those branches as their permanent home, where they lay their eggs and chill all day. You continue your way through the rainforest and see a Brazilian wandering spider crawling on a tree branch right in front of you. 8 of these species can be found in the Amazon area. They are some of the most aggressive and venomous spiders out there. So, you make a big detour and walk away from it. You feel someone walking next to you again, but you still can't figure out what it is. You see a steep cliff with a waterfall hitting a large lake ahead of you. Looks peaceful, until you see a team of black caimans gathering around the shore. They're the biggest predators in the whole Amazon ecosystem and feed on anything that moves. It's a good thing you're on high ground, otherwise, whoa! You slip and fall down the river, right on the deep end. So far, no caimans spotted you. You swim underwater and try to get to the opposite end of where the reptiles are. As you climb out and dry yourself off, you notice some large black spots on you. You try pulling them off, but they've latched on pretty hard. The Amazon giant leech finds its target by tracking movement and shadow. Once they attach themselves to the skin, it's extremely difficult to extract them. The best way to do so is to slide your finger next to its mouth and pull it off slowly. Ugh. You manage to get them off your body and see that the caimans are swimming towards you. You're pinned to the wall with the lake of hungry reptiles approaching. Suddenly, a pink dolphin jumps out of the water and splashes all over them. They can grow larger than humans and are the celebrities of the Amazon. Scientists think they get their color from the blood capillaries on their skin. The Amazon even has bull sharks swimming around. These carnivorous giant fish are threatening to humans and can swim in both saltwater and freshwater. These sharks prey on anything within their reach, including other sharks. The dolphin distracted the caimans, so you climb up the cliff and try to find the best way to escape. Opened jaws waiting for you to fall into the pit are right below you. You're lucky enough to escape to the top, but as your arms pull you up, the first thing that you see is a jaguar looking straight at you. It's the creature that's been following you this whole time. You get up while it starts circling you, timing its strike. You know that you can't take on a jaguar, nor can you outrun it, so you grab a large tree branch from the ground to defend yourself. It jumps at you, but you duck down in time. The jaguar lands in the water far away from the caiman crocs. It's a good thing these large kitties are excellent swimmers. You pick yourself up and continue. And to your surprise, you find your boat again. You fix it up and sail your way out of the Amazon. Whew!
Now, of course you know that the Amazon River is famous for its piranhas, bull sharks, and other creatures you don't want to meet. But there are even more dangerous rivers in the world. The deepest of them, the Congo, goes so far down in some sections that even light can't reach there. It's the only major river that crosses the equator twice and carries enough water to fill more than 13 Olympic-sized swimming pools into the Atlantic Ocean every second. Wow! Even the most experienced boaters have trouble passing through all of the river's strong currents, rapids in its upper part, and waterfalls and gorges in the lower section. The Congo currents are so fast and powerful that they even divide animals like mountains and oceans do. There are new species of fish evolving separately on the two banks as they can't reach the other side and breed with each other. One of the most dangerous types of fish living here is the Goliath tigerfish. These monsters, that grow up to 5 feet and travel at the speed of 25 miles per hour, are relatives of piranhas. Their mouths are full of vicious, razor-sharp teeth. Their females lay hundreds of thousands of eggs, and the offspring are predators from birth. You have a good reason to fear the Goliath tigerfish, as they're the only freshwater fish in Africa that have attacked crocodiles and even humans. Okay, not swimming there. There are dense jungles and more hungry wildlife, including snakes and some aggressive hippos, all along the river. Still, it's used as a water highway in Central Africa, so barges traveling on it for weeks are often crowded with up to 2,000 people and capsize every now and then. And if you believe the local folklore, there's one more thing to be afraid of: the one who stops the flow of the rivers, a dinosaur-like beast that is said to live in the Congo River basin. There have been over 100 sightings over the last century, but no one can provide solid evidence the beast is real. At the turn of the 21st century, there was a series of terrible, mysterious stories on the Kali River in Asia. Something described as a mud-colored water pig would drag swimmers underwater in front of terrified eyewitnesses. British biologist Jeremy Wade stepped up to crack the case. He noticed that all the scary incidents were happening in one specific spot, stretching about 4 miles. Villagers told him this creature was growing big and bad from all the food it got. Wade examined the water with a depth sounder and thought it could have been a whirlpool. Then the monster dragged a domestic water buffalo into the water. The buffaloes are big and heavy, so the creature that attacked it would have to be super strong. Saltwater crocodiles don't go so far inland, and the most common local species of crocodiles don't live in cold waters. There were no bull sharks in the area either. Finally, Wade spotted several goonch catfish underwater. Some of them were human-sized. They couldn't capture these monsters with a regular fishing rod, but a special ceremonial construction did the job. The largest fish was 6 feet 7 inches long and 3 times the weight of an average gaunch. It was large enough to take down a human or a large animal, but Wade mentioned there could be even bigger ones living in the Kali River. The Orinoco River in South America is dangerous to navigate because of some crazy curves and strong underwater currents. It's easy to get lost here, even if you have your GPS on. There are sudden waterfalls all along, and you must be prepared to handle those to survive. The river is the only home to a rare Orinoco crocodile and has some pretty scary-looking vampire fish swimming around. This payara fish has sharp, spiky daggers that line their gums and 2 elongated fangs that rise from their lower jaws. Could probably use an orthodontist and some braces, you think? It's a ferocious hunter constantly looking for the next victim, which is going to be a medium or large-sized fish. If a human catches a payara, it will defend itself, leaving cuts, nips, and bites, but there are no known cases of this cutie taking a human life. Well, that's good. The Yellow River in China received its name after its color, but it wasn't always this yellow. It was first formed at least 30 million years ago and shifted its course over 30 times over the centuries. Yellow sediments moving downstream from a plateau in the distance transformed it from clear to muddy. This fine-grained substance piled up at the bottom of the river and formed natural dams. The huge amounts of water that the river carries need to find their way to the sea, and that's when major floods happened, taking several million lives in various epochs. The locals tried to solve the problem by building higher and higher levees, but it only made things worse. Water coming out of the river would now have nowhere to back up, as the riverbed was higher than the surrounding land. This even shifted the river's mouth. Now there are massive dams and dikes all along the river to try to contain it. The Piranha River is the second longest in Latin America and has many tributaries. They flow in from the highlands near the Andes, and there's a huge drainage in the wet season. This makes the river a perfect home for, guess what, piranhas. There are 30 to 60 species of these scary fish in the piranha waters. In late 2013, they attacked bathers cooling off by the water on a hot day. People started running out of the river as they felt something was biting them in the water. Luckily, no one lost their lives in the accident, but it's still considered one of the most audacious piranha attacks ever recorded. Biologists later determined that the type of piranhas, called palomates, was to blame for this, and humans had probably disturbed their breeding grounds. Well, the piranha also has a strong current that is tricky for boats and swimmers to overcome. Plus, it often floods, which can be dangerous for people living in the surrounding areas. The longest river in the world, the Nile, flows through 11 countries all the way into the Mediterranean Sea. Expeditions have spent centuries looking for its source, and no one still knows for sure where this mighty river begins. Adding to the mystery, the Nile takes an unexpected turn right in the middle of the Sahara. Scientists have figured out the reason is a massive underground rock formation from millions of years ago. The Nile has served as the most important water highway for civilizations through centuries, but it has some pretty dangerous inhabitants, like crocodiles that grow to be 20 feet long, which is slightly more than the height of an average giraffe. These bad guys can reach a speed of 30 miles per hour on land and take the lives of a couple hundred people every year. Hippopotamuses that also live here sometimes go after boats, and venomous snakes like the black mamba and the Egyptian cobra add to the mix. One of the most dangerous creatures on the Nile is the mosquito, as they carry around all sorts of diseases that affect hundreds of thousands of people. The Brahmaputra River in Asia carries waters from the mighty Himalayas. When the snows in the mountains melt, the river floods massively, causing landslides, displacing millions of people, and taking the lives of hundreds of animals in the nearby national parks. Such floods are also common during the monsoon season in India, from June to October, with heavy rains. The course of the Brahmaputra River is changed incredibly over the past 2.5 centuries. Erosion is another danger it's hiding. The banks of the river are mostly made of weak cohesive sand and silt, and even though the erosion rate has gone down, it is still the reason a lot of people lose their land and get displaced. The Brahmaputra is one of the few rivers in the world that has a tidal bore. That's a strong tidal wave that pushes up the river against the current where a river empties into an ocean or sea. And there you have it. Around 2,500 years ago, an earthquake completely changed the course of one of the largest and most famous rivers on the planet, the Ganges. Now, it's normal for rivers not to sit in one place, so if you live next to one, it could also just disappear without a trace or flood the whole city one day. In the case of the Ganges River, a supermassive earthquake became the reason for this dramatic change. Scientists say it might happen again, and it would be a huge problem for millions of people who depend on this river. The Ganges River starts as small streams in the Himalayas and travels a long way, over 1,500 miles. Along its journey, it meets other big rivers before all the water flows into the Bay of Bengal. The Ganges has the largest delta in the world among all rivers. Just like many other rivers in the region, it slowly changes its path over time. These changes, if they happen when a river wears away its banks, usually takes a long time, sometimes decades. Scientists have discovered that the Ganges-Brahmaputra river system has shifted several times over the last 6,000 years. When they looked at satellite images of the Ganges Delta, they noticed something interesting. There was a crescent-shaped dip in the ground about 28 miles away from where the river is flowing now. This depression was over 1 mile wide and stretched for many miles. They thought it might have been an old main channel of the Ganges River a long time ago. In 2018, the team decided to visit the area to check it out for themselves and take samples to learn more about it. While driving back home, they noticed a pit where someone was digging dirt to create a pond. The next day, they planned to fill it with water, but the researchers spotted something strange in the dirt. There were vertical bands of light-colored sand mixed into the darker mud. These special layers are clues from the past. They show that an ancient earthquake made sand and water shoot up from below the ground and created sand volcanoes that were trapped in time. The scientists studied the sand and mud and figured out that these earthquakes happened around 2,500 years ago and were strong, with magnitudes of 7 to 8. The epicenter was over 110 miles away from the main stem of the river, but it was powerful enough to displace it. It could have affected around 140 million people. The Ganges-Brahmaputra system is close to spots where Earth's tectonic plates meet, so earthquakes happen here often. There's no danger right now, But scientists think that another massive earthquake could happen in the next few hundred or thousand years. It could threaten up to 170 million people. That's about half the population of the U.S. No one can predict exactly when an earthquake will happen or how strong it will be. Learning how earthquakes in the past moved rivers helps scientists figure out patterns and make guesses about similar events in the future. This knowledge could help us prepare better and create safety plans before another big earthquake strikes. Now, the Ganges isn't the only river at risk. The Yellow River, the Irrawaddy River, and rivers in the United States like the Klamath and San Joaquin all face similar dangers. The mighty Mississippi River has also switched its path many times over the last 7,000 years. Right now, there's a huge system of dams and barriers called a control structure in central Louisiana. This structure's job is to stop the Mississippi from spilling over its banks and joining a nearby river. But scientists think that, in theory, these barriers wouldn't handle megafloods. So the Mississippi could break free and change its course again. This would cause massive problems, especially in southern Louisiana. One of the recent examples when a river changing its course caused disaster was the Kosi River in India. In August 2008, over just a few days, the river's path shifted by almost 60 miles, which is a huge change. Floods happen in some parts of the state rather often, but they hadn't seen such strong ones in over 50 years. They affected around 1,000 villages and 3 million people, and about 1 million people had to be evacuated to safety. Since many of these people hadn't faced floods in so long, they weren't ready to handle it quickly. It caused even more damage to their homes and lives. Scientists have been trying for decades to figure out what exactly makes rivers suddenly change their course. A new study explains that two things work together to make a river to do it. This process is called avulsion. First, there's the setup, which is like building up tension before something big happens. Over time, sediment, sand, dirt, and other stuff carried by the river gets deposited in certain places. It either raises the river above the land around it or makes a nearby slope steeper than the river's current path. Then there's the trigger, which is like the final straw that makes everything happen. This trigger could be a big flood, an earthquake, or even something like a pile of logs blocking the water. Now, researchers looked at satellite images of about 170 cases of avulsion from the past 50 years. They noticed these events happen most often near river mouths and near mountains. Rivers were about 3 times more likely to change course in these places than in the areas between them. They also studied 58 river channels in detail, using super clear maps to measure super elevation. That's how high the river is compared to the land around it. They also measured slope advantage. That's how steep a new path might be compared to the river's current one. They found that near mountains, rivers often pile up so much sediment that they become super elevated and spill over. But near river mouths, like in deltas, rivers need a steep slope advantage to break through the mud and form a new path. These two factors work together like a seesaw. If one is stronger, the other doesn't need to be as strong for an avulsion to happen. To figure out where a river might go if it changes course, the researchers created a smart computer algorithm. This tool uses maps to measure the terrain's steepness and the river's flow to predict where the river might move. They tested it on 10 past avulsions, and it correctly guessed the path every single time. Scientists hope they could use these findings to protect people living near rivers from sudden floods. Rivers changing course played a big role in creating one of the first organized administration systems in the world. Scientists found clues for this in the territory of ancient Mesopotamia. This name means the land between two rivers, and it was between the rivers Tigris and the Euphrates. People living there relied on these rivers for water, food, and transportation. Scientists wanted to figure out how these sudden changes in these rivers affected ancient people. To do this, they used two kinds of maps. The archaeological maps show how ancient cities grew over time, including what types of buildings people built. Certain buildings, like big palaces or city walls, could show when each city first had an organized administration. The second kind of map showed where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers flowed long ago. They often shifted, sometimes slowly, and sometimes very quickly and dramatically. Around the year 5000 BCE, Mesopotamia started to become drier and farming became harder. Farmers had to grow their crops near rivers, where they could use the natural floods to water their fields or dig little channels to bring river water to their plants. Because farming was so important, towns and cities grew near the rivers too, so people could stay close to their food. But when a river suddenly changed its course, people didn't give up. They worked together to dig long canals to bring water from the new river path back to their fields. The canals helped them get water again, and the administration buildings showed they were organizing as a community to solve big problems together. Most rivers in the world flow into the sea, but the Okavango in Africa takes its massive waters right into the Kalahari Desert, and it looks like this river manages to do the impossible and defies gravity. The Okavango starts in the highlands of Angola, runs for 1,000 miles like any other normal river, and then drops into the largest inland delta on Earth, known as the Okavango Swamp. The delta has land slopes dropping at nearly 150 feet, which is about half as tall as the Statue of Liberty. The area where the Okavango Delta is now used to be part of a lake that dried up around 2,000 years ago. It takes the Okavango water several months to complete its journey, and the landscape there is never the same. The first European to have found the delta was the Scottish explorer David Livingstone. Yeah, the Dr. Livingstone, I presume, guy? That's him. When he first saw it, he was shocked as he noticed that the water seemed to be flowing backward and even uphill. He saw two strong watercourses connecting the Okavango to the wetland systems to the east. Decades later, other explorers saw them completely dry. Several years later, the watercourses were full again, and they kept emptying and filling up, sometimes changing direction. Scientists managed to explain this mystery when they found a hidden network of faults, part of the Great Rift Valley, under the sand. When major earthquakes happen, like the one in Indonesia in 2004, the Earth sets off a chain reaction. Tiny cracks underground shift just enough to send a trickle of water down the river, and a flood begins, raising the water levels. Plus, in May and June, when winter begins in the southern hemisphere, floods bring more fresh water and life to the swamp. Islands get submerged completely during the peak floods and then resurface again at the end of the wet season. Wildlife just loves all the water in the delta, and you can often see migratory elephants bathing among pink lily pads and silverfish, bream, barbels, and other fish. There are lions, cheetahs, buffalo, wildebeests, hippopotamuses, hippopotami, zebras, wild dogs, crocodiles, and other species of animals. Storks, ibis, herons, cranes, and geese like to fly by, along with 450 species of birds. Although the Okavango has plenty of water that is priceless in the desert, people hardly settle along its banks. One big problem here is the tsetse fly. But if you're feeling adventurous, you can come here for a water safari. Scientists from Imperial College in London stumbled upon a totally unexpected river under the Antarctic ice sheet. It slurps up water from an area as big as Germany and France combined. Scientists used to think the lakes under the Antarctic ice were just chilling by themselves. But now it turns out they're part of an interconnected river network. Water under the ice can form in two ways, either from melted snow seeping down or from the Earth's natural heat and the ice grinding over the ground. The Antarctic gets a lot of surface melting during the summer, but Antarctica is usually too chilly for that. This newly found river is proof that there's plenty of water down there just from the ice melting from below. This river could make Antarctica lose its icy cover way faster. If things heat up enough to melt the surface, that water could rush down and mess with the base of the ice sheet, turning Antarctica into a melting mess like Greenland. If the ice starts moving faster than the water can handle, it's going to create more friction, making even more water and speeding up the melting process. The researchers are on a mission to dig deeper into how this river system works and see if it's causing trouble in other parts of the icy continent. Understanding what's going on down there could give us a heads up on how a changing Antarctica might shake up the whole planet. The Rio River in Montana flows for just a bit over 200 feet between Giant Springs and the Missouri River. It was mentioned in the Guinness Book of World Records as the shortest river in the world, but they had to remove this category altogether because there was some heated debate over this title. Residents of Oregon claim that their D River was the absolute champion, as it all depends on when you measure them. There could even be shorter rivers in Norway or Indonesia, depending on what you see as a river. The official definition says it's something that has constant flowing water in the form of a current and is fed by upland sources or another river, lake, or watershed. Creeks and brooks flow together to form streams. Streams become rivers, and rivers take the water from higher to lower lands, ending in the ocean. There are 12 stream orders, and the first two levels don't have other streams feeding them. So, Rio and its other short buddies technically deserve the title of rivers. I'm glad we cleared that up. Rio Negro in South America is the largest blackwater river in the world and the largest left tributary of the Amazon jungle. Its waters look more like strong tea and seem pitch black only from the distance. They get that dark color from humic acid. When plants containing phenol break down only halfway, they leave behind this tea-like hue. Some people believe that blackwater rivers can't be productive, but Rio Negro helps big fishing industries and has spots where turtles come to lay their eggs. Back in the 17th century, explorers didn't find tons of indigenous folks along the river. But it probably didn't have to do with its productivity, more with diseases and conflicts. There are around 700 different fish species documented in Rio Negro's basin, including at least 100 you won't find anywhere else. A bunch of those fish end up in aquariums, like the super popular cardinal tetra. There is a canal connecting Rio Negro and the Orinoco, which is another major river in South America. Many aquatic species try to move between the rivers, but only the toughest can handle the mix of blackwater and clearwater sections in that canal. There's a unique creek in Wyoming that drains both into the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans. It begins high up in the Teton Range and later splits into two branches. The Pacific Creek joins the larger Snake River, which merges with the Columbia River and finally reaches the Pacific Ocean. The Atlantic Creek heads east and flows into the Yellowstone, Missouri, and Mississippi rivers and eventually empties into the Gulf of Mexico. If you connect the two creeks' watersheds on a map, you'll get a single blue line between Oregon and Louisiana. Explorers who were looking for the Northwest Passage between the two oceans never knew they could have used the creek. They would just need really tiny boats. Some scientists believe that cutthroat trout knew about this route long before people. They managed to migrate from the Snake River to the Yellowstone River, most likely using the two-ocean creek. Now, every summer, the Caño Cristales in Colombia turns into a liquid rainbow, or the River of Five Colors. At this time, and until the end of fall, the conditions are just perfect for the riverbed to turn bright red, yellow, green, blue, and black. You gotta thank certain aquatic plants growing in the river, a special type of seaweed for all this beauty. During the wet season, the river moves fast and the sun cannot get to these plants. When the dry season hits, there isn't enough water to feed them. So the time in between the seasons has the perfect conditions for this colorful show. No other place in the world has anything similar. So, at some point, the number of tourists who wanted to see it became so huge that scientists got concerned it could be bad for this hotspot of biodiversity. The area is home to rare species of animals, birds, and plants. Now, there are ecotourism trails and strict opening hours for visitors.
You know how they say it's better to just hand over your wallet if you run into a mugger? Instead of surrendering their wallets, sea cucumbers choose to spit out some of their insides to fend off predators like crabs and fish. It's a natural defense mechanism for them, and they quickly grow those organs back in just a few days, thanks to special cells inside their bodies. It's not the only weird thing sea cucumbers do. they can actually breathe through their rear end. They have this thing called a respiratory tree that connects to their backside and sits right next to their intestines. So when they suck in water from their behind, it goes into that respiratory tree, letting them absorb oxygen directly into their fluids. Plus, sea cucumbers are the janitors of the ocean. They munch on whatever gets stuck in the sand on the ocean floor. Once they've eaten, they manage to clean out the sand, leaving it nice and tidy after they do their business. As for the clean sand, the stunning white sand beaches in Hawaii are actually a product of parrotfish number 2. These fish munch on algae from rocks and dead corals, and while they're chomping away, they also grind up the leftover bits of coral in their bellies. When they're done, they move their bowels, and voila! It all comes out as beautiful sand. Not only do they play a vital role in keeping the coral reef ecosystem healthy, but they can churn out hundreds of pounds of this white sand every year. Marine animals are seriously impressive when it comes to holding their breath. Just look at sperm whales and elephant seals. They can stay underwater for a mind-blowing 2 hours. Then there's a Cuvier's beaked whale, which holds the crazy record at almost 4 hours underwater. When you compare that to the human record of 24 minutes and 37 seconds held by pro diver Budimir Shobat, it seems pretty insignificant. But what's the marine animal's secret that helps them excel humans this much? Unlike us, these sea creatures have a ton of hemoglobin and myoglobin in their blood and muscles, allowing them to store way more oxygen. When their oxygen runs low, myoglobin steps up and releases even more. Plus, they can tolerate higher levels of CO2, so they don't feel the need to breathe as quickly. There's even a study that found their myoglobin molecules have a unique charge that keeps them from sticking together, which boosts oxygen storage. And on top of all that, they can slow down their heart rate and restrict blood flow to hang out underwater even longer. Rumor has it that about 540 million years ago, a meteor loaded with frozen octopus eggs smashed into Earth. Sounds like a delirium, but some scientists are entertaining a very questionable idea that octopuses and their cephalopod buddies, like squids and cuttlefish, might actually have some extraterrestrial origins. The thing is, cephalopods have extraordinary DNA that doesn't look like any other DNA on our planet. They've got around 33,000 protein-coding genes in their genome, which is way more than what we humans have. A recent study suggests that their evolutionary story shows some odd traits that might hint at a connection to space, like they could be from some super far-off past, or even the future. The researchers went as far as to claim that modern octopuses could be the descendants of these frozen creatures that hitched a ride on comets and splashed down in our oceans. And why octopuses? Well, they really stand out in the animal kingdom. They can use different tools to build their own houses, and they can even solve everyday problems independently of their brain, as 2/3 of an octopus's neurons are in its arms. These traits seem to have just appeared out of nowhere during evolution. They even tossed around another quirky theory. What if an extraterrestrial virus crashed into early squid populations and gave them a crazy boost in evolution, turning them into the octopuses we know today? Anyways, these are just fun speculations without any hard proof. Now, this funky object is an animal, not a rock. It's called sand dollar. Just look at the shape of its shell. Once sand dollars are exposed to the sun, their shells lose their soft, spiny covering and become bleached white. Back in the day, beachcombers thought these shells looked a lot like big silver coins, kind of like the old Spanish dollar that was about the same size. But if you prefer, you can call them sand cakes instead. These quirky creatures have tiny spines on their surface, and they glide along the ocean floor. They use small tube feet that line the grooves on their underside to grab bits of food like plankton and algae, which they then send to their mouths. Inside, they have 5 triangular teeth that help them munch on their meals. In some Georgia folklore, sand dollars are said to represent coins lost by mermaids. Sand dollars have a unique talent for cloning themselves. They can do this for a bunch of reasons, like when a predator comes around. Some species of sand dollar larvae can actually split in half as a defense mechanism. It takes about 24 hours for them to clone themselves, and the new larvae end up being about 2/3 smaller than the original, which helps them hide from danger. Wait, is that a giant sea hot dog racing through the ocean? Sorta. Some scientists have joked that sperm whales seriously resemble enormous hot dogs. These massive creatures can take quick naps, standing up for about 10 to 15 minutes. They only sleep about 7% of the time, mostly between 6 p.m. and midnight. Sperm whales also have a cool ability to retract and extend their eyes, thanks to a thick retractor muscle around them, but they can't actually roll their eyes in their sockets. Plus, they have the most asymmetrical skull of any mammal out there. Oh, and let's not forget, they have the largest brain of any living creature, weighing in at over 9 pounds. Unlike us humans, if dolphins went into full-on snooze, they'd stop breathing and could drown. So they figured out a genius solution. They let only one side of their brain sleep at a time. This means one half stays awake to keep them breathing and watching out for any potential threats. When they snooze, they only close one eye. If their right brain is resting, their left eye is shut, and vice versa. This unique sleep style is called unihemispheric sleep, and it lets them recharge without ever fully losing awareness. On top of that, dolphins might be using corals and sponges like their own little pharmacies. Scientists have seen them rubbing their bodies against specific types of coral and sponges, suggesting they might be treating skin issues. They've even spotted dolphins lining up to take turns at these spots, using corals like Gorgonian coral Rumphella aggregata, leather coral, and some sponges. What's really fascinating is that researchers have analyzed these corals and found they contain compounds that could help with dolphin skin conditions, which can sometimes lead to infections and lesions. Now, the big question is figuring out exactly how each type of coral helps dolphins, and if it really boosts their health overall. Sea urchins aren't exactly the Usain Bolts of the ocean. They move slowly by crawling with their tube feet and occasionally give themselves a little push with their spines. These little guys have just 5 teeth, which they use like a beak to scrape algae off rocks, which I'm pretty sure is the ocean's version of an all-you-can-eat buffet. But since all that scraping wears their teeth down, they're in a never-ending dental replacement program. Scallops are the underwater equivalent of the world's most confused security cameras, sporting up to 200 tiny eyes on their shells. These eyes are high-tech. They can even adjust their pupils to light. Instead of working like ours, scallop eyes have a unique setup. Light goes through a pupil, lens, 2 retinas, and then hits a mirror made of guanine crystals that reflects it back. Scientists were puzzled about how they see since their main retina often gets blurry light. But it turns out, scallops can change their pupil size by about 50%. Just don't expect them to do it in a hurry, as it takes a few minutes.
Now here's something really neat about orcas. They're expert hunters, and they do it in groups called pods. A pod can consist of up to 40 orcas, forming a very effective hunting team. Interestingly, there are distinct types of pods, resident and transient. Resident pods are more into fish, while transient pods have a taste for marine mammals. But no matter what type of pod they belong to, all orcas have one thing in common. They are master collaborators. They work together using smart hunting techniques that are often compared to the teamwork of wolf packs. Almost 95% of jellyfish's body is made of water. For comparison, the human body is 60% water. It's probably not a surprise since jellyfish don't have a heart, blood, eyes, or brain. The other 5% of their body weight is proteins, muscles, and nerve cells. Jellyfish have been around for more than 500 million years. This makes them older than dinosaurs. These creatures haven't changed much, and today's jellyfish are pretty much like their ancestors. Electric eels have small eyes that are not so effective in environments with no light, so they mostly rely on their electric organs. Those consist of 6,000 cells. Eels use them to stow power, similar to batteries. These creatures use electricity like bats use their radars or dolphins their sonar. An eel can also produce enough electricity to power a panel of light bulbs. There's a small tropical archer fish that can learn to recognize human faces. This fish has an interesting ability to spit small jets of water from its mouth. Researchers showed the fish the image of two different faces placed side by side. One was unknown and the other was familiar. The fish was supposed to spit water at the familiar one. The creature took the right guess more than 80% of the time. There's such a thing as a sea unicorn. That's an animal called the narwhal. Its horn is actually a tooth that can grow up to 10 feet long. Manatees, also known as sea cows, are distant relatives of elephants. Their weight can go up to 1,000 pounds. These creatures are vegetarian and need to eat around 10% of their total weight on a daily basis. That's lots of sea salad. In some cases, manatees share space with alligators, but they get along pretty well. You can even find a photo from Florida where an alligator rides a manatee's back. Frogfish have special fins that help these creatures walk along the sand. They're very useful in shallow waters. A ghost pipefish is hard to see, but once you spot it, you're bound to get really surprised. Its head makes up over 40% of its body. Crabs don't feel like wasting time on such formalities as putting foods in their mouth. That's why they taste it with their feet, which is where their taste buds are. Marine iguanas are the only lizards on our planet that like spending time in the ocean, even though they mainly live on land. They're herbivores that feed in shallow waters and swim like snakes. Iguanas use their long claws to hold onto the bottom when they need to graze. Green turtles can cross over 1,400 miles when migrating. They try to find the perfect spot to lay their eggs. Penguins sort of fly when they're underwater, reaching a speed of 25 miles per hour. More than 5 million years ago, I've heard, I wasn't around then, deep-sea worms and humans had a common ancestor. So we still share 70% of our genes with these creatures, and with sea stars, squid, and octopuses. Now, octopuses are in fact incredibly old. The oldest known fossil belongs to an animal that lived almost 300 million years ago. FYI, this is before our dinosaur buddies roamed the Earth. Wait, there's more! Octopus arms have a mind of their own. That's because 2/3 of their neurons lie in their arms, not in their heads. This means that their arms can problem solve how to open a shellfish, while their owner is worried about other stuff entirely. Talk about ninja-level multitasking. Oh, and like other animals, such as chimpanzees and dolphins, octopuses have proven to be good at maneuvering tools, like picking up old shells and using them as a temporary home. Now, of course, the most intelligent animals on our planet are humans, according to humans. But we don't seem to give pigs enough credit. Pigs are so smart they can play video games. No, not Minecraft. But in a recent academic study, scientists had 4 pigs play a joystick game. They had to manipulate the stick so that the moving ball would hit the wall and then they would get a treat. All 4 pigs did great in the test, which was surprising even to the scientists. Now, pigeons also aced an impressive test. They were trained to differentiate a Picasso painting from a Monet one, which they had no trouble learning. Then they were able to apply this knowledge, identifying works of art they had not previously seen, meaning they really understood the difference between each painter. Poor things are always seen as a nuisance. Now, if we placed kangaroos in an Animal's Most Amazing Ability contest, they'd win. It's mainly because they break the four-legged rule. A special species of kangaroo, the red kangaroo, uses its tail to help propel it forward. Now, visually, it has 4 limbs, but in practice, it uses 5. They're biologically built to use their tail as a 5th limb, since it's packed with articulated vertebrae and thick muscles. Of course, it had to be an Australian animal. Deep within the Sahara Desert, you'll find a little creature known as the fennec fox. This huge-eared animal adapted perfectly to survive in its hostile environment. The huge ears help them to dissipate the unbearable heat of the desert, as well as help them to hunt for underground prey. Now meet this guy. Unlike what its name might suggest, the red panda is closer to a raccoon than it is to a giant panda. You'll find a lot of these cat-sized creatures in the Himalayan region, hopping from tree to tree and bundled together trying to keep warm in the harsh weather. They're gentle and friendly like their big panda cousins and occasionally enjoy eating some bamboo sticks. And then there are bees. Compared to humans, bees' brains are the size of pinheads, yet they are capable of astounding things. Let's say a bee is running low on energy after a long search flight. This bee desperately needs a drop of honey in order to continue flying, but smartly enough, she doesn't need to go back to the hive to recharge. She can ask a fellow beehive mate for a drop of honey directly from this other bee's stomach and continue flying. This type of decentralized system allows them to build highly effective societies, one that bees don't need to push to the queues in front of the honey cells, for example. Every year in the winter, great white sharks that live along the California coastline disappear. It feels as if they take a vacation for 30 to 40 days. The animals go to a point halfway between Hawaii and Mexico. They might do it to get some food, relax, or hang out with their buddies from other areas. The spot is now called the Whale Shark Cafe. Some types of sharks, like makos, whale sharks, or white sharks, breathe in a very specific way. It requires them to swim all the time. They also need to move quickly and with their mouth open. This way, the oxygen can enter and reach their gills. Sea sponges are some of the most primitive animals. They're immobile, don't have a mouth, eyes, bones, brain, heart, lungs, or any other organ whatsoever. And still, they're alive. There's such a thing as a sea unicorn. That's an animal called the narwhal. Its horn is actually a tooth that can grow up to 10 feet long. Manatees, also known as sea cows, are distant relatives of elephants. Their weight can go up to 1,000 pounds. These creatures are vegetarian and need to eat around 10% of their total weight on a daily basis. That's lots of sea salad. In some cases, manatees share space with alligators, but they get along pretty well. You can even find a photo from Florida where an alligator rides a manatee's back. Frogfish have special fins that help these creatures walk along the sand. They're very useful in shallow waters. A ghost pipefish is hard to see, but once you spot it, you're bound to get really surprised. Its head makes up over 40% of its body. Crabs don't feel like wasting time on such formalities as putting foods in their mouth. That's why they taste it with their feet, which is where their taste buds are. Marine iguanas are the only lizards on our planet that like spending time in the ocean, even though they mainly live on land. They're herbivores that feed in shallow waters and swim like snakes. There's something known as the orange cat behavior, and apparently it's not just a meme. So far, scientists have been able to understand that coat color is connected to a feline's gender. And since orange is an X chromosome, orange cats are usually males, like Garfield. The so-called orange cat behavior describes ginger cats as agents of chaos. Again, pretty much like Garfield. However, there haven't been any conclusive studies on whether coat color and cat behavior are truly linked. In terms of vision, mantis shrimps probably have the most psychedelic vision out of all animals. These funny-looking creatures have a whopping 16 varieties of photoreceptors, with 5 of them reserved for the ultraviolet or UV spectrum. Ultraviolet rays are really short wavelengths, which are invisible to humans. The thing science still doesn't understand is how exactly these mantis shrimp view the world around them. Sure, they can perceive a bunch of colors, but they can't necessarily distinguish all of these colors among themselves. It can be that they just see a lot of really vivid, really blurry colors, but we haven't figured out a way to check that out. Now, to say sloths are cute is an understatement. They may be one of the friendliest animals in the jungle, but there's more. If you look closely at their fur coat, you'll notice hints of green. These greeneries are actually tiny little algae that grow alongside sloths. They help sloths to camouflage better in the jungle, but they also nurture them. The little cracks inside a sloth's fur create the perfect environment for algae reproduction, and scientists have found species of algae that don't exist anywhere else in the world. They do get by with a little help from their friends. Deep within the Sahara Desert, you'll find a little creature known as the fennec fox. This huge-eared animal adapted perfectly to survive in its hostile environment. The huge ears help them to dissipate the unbearable heat of the desert, as well as help them to hunt for underground prey.
Oh wow, there's a hole in the bottom of the ocean. It seems that the ocean has a leak. But it's not like a leak you would expect, where water is flowing out. It's more like a spring since water is flowing in, not out. This unique leak is something we know as Pythia's oasis. A grad student was the one who accidentally discovered it. He noticed bubbles that were rising to the surface. Normally, bubbles in the ocean tell us there might be some hydrothermal vents, which are hotspots for some pretty cool things. These vents are actually like hot springs on the seafloor, but instead of bubbling with warm water, they release a fluid that has been superheated in the crust of our planet. When seawater seeps into these cracks and travels deep into the crust, it comes into contact with the extremely hot mantle. This heats seawater to very high temperatures, and as it moves back up towards the surface, it carries dissolved gases and minerals. When the hot fluid shoots out of the vents, it mixes with the surrounding seawater and quickly cools down. Just a short distance away from the vent, the temperature can drop to a comfortable 68 degrees Fahrenheit or so, which is, as it seems, exactly what some creatures like. And there are some real weirdos living down there in the darkness, like ghostly fish, giant red-tipped tube worms, and a unique type of shrimp with eyes on their back. And some of them, like tube worms and bacteria, rely on the chemicals and minerals released by the vents to survive in harsh conditions. But in this case, the bubbling water didn't come from a hydrothermal vent. It was there because of a spring, and that's a bit more concerning. You see, the water in this reservoir needs to stay where it is. If too much of it seeps out, there could be some serious consequences, especially for the surrounding area. You can see this unusual leak along the Cascadia subduction zone, which is a massive fault line off the Pacific Northwest coast. It's a place where two pretty big plates that make up Earth's crust come together and slide along each other. The water from Pythia's oasis kinda acts as a lubricant between these plates. You can think of the fault zone as an air hockey table. When the fluid pressure is high, it's like you've turned the air on. That means the friction between the plates is reduced, which allows the plates to move. But if the fluid pressure is lower, the two plates can lock together, which then leads to the buildup of stress. Not that they'll feel bad. In the context of tectonic plates, stress is some pressure or force that can cause deformation. And if this stress starts to build up, at some point, it's gotta go somewhere. When it's too much, it can trigger earthquakes and most likely, not small ones. For example, a release of stress in the Cascadia subduction zone could lead to a magnitude 9 earthquake. For comparison, the biggest earthquake we've ever recorded happened in Chile in 1960, and it had a magnitude of 9.5. The damage was enormous. So we hope the water will stay in its reservoir and keep maintaining the delicate balance between the tectonic plates. We've explored only 5% of the ocean. Who knows how many cool things are there at the bottom, waiting to be found? For example, check out these mysterious holes scientists have stumbled upon in the depths of the Atlantic Ocean, near the Azores. They're neatly aligned and are about 4 inches apart, or in some cases, even several feet. They resemble punctures left by a sewing machine. Some think these holes could have a biological origin. For instance, some fish may have made them while walking along the seafloor. Others believe we could be looking at something that's human-made, maybe left by a spiked tire. Of course, such holes are perfect for making up stories about creatures from other planets who allegedly made them. Or maybe even legendary monsters, like that one from Loch Ness. It's definitely hard to explain such symmetry of the holes, but one deep-sea biologist offered a pretty good explanation. He said there could be an animal burrowing beneath the sediment, and from time to time, it could make little chimneys just to get access to clean water circulation in its small burrow. I mean, there are sediment piles around the opening of each hole, and they do support the idea that something pushed the soil from below. But there's still no proof these holes are actually connected beneath the surface. And there are also a lot of things hidden at the bottom of the oceans and seas that ancient civilizations left us. For instance, archaeologists made a really cool discovery off the southern coast of Croatia. A road hidden under layers of sea mud that's 7,000 years old. They found the ancient road at the sunken Neolithic site of Solin. The site of Solin was a human-made island in ancient times, and an archaeologist discovered it 2 years ago. He was studying satellite images of the area around Korčula, one of the beautiful Croatian islands. When he realized there could be something interesting at the bottom of the sea, he dove into the water with his colleague. And under the surface of the Adriatic Sea, which is part of the Mediterranean Sea, at a depth of 13 to 16 feet, they found stone walls that were most likely part of some ancient settlement. The landmass where people built the settlement was separated from the main island by a narrow stretch of land. Luckily, this area is protected from big waves by the surrounding islands, so the site remained relatively well preserved. It's now hidden beneath the surface of the sea and covered in mud. But it's so exciting to imagine how people walked on that road nearly 7,000 years ago, visiting nearby settlements. If you want to see the weirdest creatures, you can always head to the bottom of the sea. Actually, scientists have determined there could be more than 30 potentially new species at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. They've collected them using their remote-controlled vehicle. That's a big step because until recently, they could only study such creatures through photographs. I'm talking about segmented worms, different types of coral, some invertebrates similar to centipedes, and many others. But there are also many old freaky creatures that we already know about that look like they came from sci-fi movies. Red octopus, blobfish. Okay, this one kinda looks normal until you raise it to the surface. The goblin shark, Sloane's viperfish, zombie worms. Ugh. Yeah, I hear ya. Let's move on. The seafloor hides things from space, too. There are traces of rare forms of plutonium and iron at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. And what's awesome is that all this has come from space. These radioactive materials probably formed during some kind of cataclysmic event in space and eventually made their way out to our beautiful home planet. And this extraterrestrial debris most likely appeared on Earth within the past 10 million years. After it fell to the Pacific Ocean and settled at a depth of almost a mile, it became part of all those layers of rock down there. Plutonium is especially exciting for scientists. I mean, only tiny amounts of it have been found. Hundreds of atoms maybe. But it's still remarkable because these atoms are created by exploding stars. Things like this can help us better understand how the universe produces elements heavier than iron, like plutonium, gold, uranium, and platinum. We're still not sure about the origins of these elements. For a long time, scientists believed that supernovae, which is when a star comes to its end in a fabulous explosion, were responsible for creating these heavy elements. But it seems it's not just that. Some other cosmic events, such as the collision of neutron stars, which are super dense collapsed stars, or some rare types of supernovae, could also be involved. Whoa, let me get my popcorn!
In the past 30 years, scientists have made an incredible discovery of a new creature living deep beneath the surface of the ocean. And the name of the creature is the harp sponge. Now, if you're wondering why it took so long to come across this animal, then I might have the answer. These creatures typically hang out at a depth of roughly 11,100 feet beneath the ocean's waves. This sponge species was first discovered off the coast of California thanks to a robot that was sturdy enough to explore those crazy depths the ocean has to offer. This is no doubt an area of the planet where even the most benign-looking creatures can be potentially dangerous. But even scientists were surprised to find that this creature was more than just a sponge. Now, this might seem obvious, but the harp sponge got its name because its basic structure, referred to as a vein, is the same shape as a harp. Each vein is made up of a horizontal branch supporting several parallel vertical branches. But don't let the harp sponge's fanciful and amusing appearance or its non-intimidating name fool you. Yeah, the harp sponge is very much a deep-sea hunter. It has a unique ability to capture and envelop small animals using its rhizoids, short, thin fibers. With their help, the harp sponge clings on to the soft muddy bottom and catches tiny creatures that get swept into its branches by deep-sea currents. Uh-oh. Other sponge creatures often feed by pulling bacteria and bits of organic matter from the seawater and filtering them through their bodies. But not our harp sponge. Instead, it snatches its future meal with minuscule barbed hooks that cover each of the harp sponge's branches. Now, harp sponges prefer tiny crustaceans like crabs, crayfish, shrimps, and prawns. Once the harp sponge has one of them in its clutches, it envelops the animal in a thin membrane before slowly beginning to digest it. So, pal, what's eating you? Oh, Harpo? Too bad. Researchers believe that harp sponges use this method of feeding because there aren't enough nutrients that deep down. This makes traditional filter feeding less effective. Research has shown that the creature is still in the process of evolving. Early harp sponges, researchers found, only had 2 veins, but later, scientists discovered other harp sponges that had 6 veins. The harp sponge might have evolved this elaborate candle holder-like structure to increase its surface area. In general, harp sponges typically grow up to a length of 1 foot, but researchers have seen a creature that was 2 feet in length. The harp sponge is not only very unusual, but also beautiful to look at. See those tiny white balls on top of the branches? Now, why don't we look at some other creatures that live below the photic zone of Earth's oceans? The photic zone means the area beneath the ocean's surface that still receives some sunlight. Thanks to this, there are loads of different creatures and organisms living there. Any animal living beyond this layer qualifies as a deep-sea creature. The Tomopterus worm is a segmented worm you can find in the twilight zone of the ocean. This is the area that lies between 650 and 3,300 feet beneath the surface. These creatures are often no more than 1 inch long, but the largest of them can grow up to 1 foot. While swimming around and feeding, these worms do what researchers describe as an amazing smooth dance. That's because the creatures can swim extremely quickly and maneuver at tight angles with ease. Now, I know most people hear the word worm and think of the common earthworm, so it's quite interesting to know there's a deep-sea worm out there that never leaves the water during its entire life. Similarly, most of us try to avoid jellyfish that either rest on the sand or sit on top of the ocean waves. This isn't the case with a crocodile jelly. That's a deep-sea creature too. This beautiful jellyfish is mostly ruby red, bright orange, or electric purple. That's what helped researchers realize they had found a new species of jellyfish. The creature grows to a maximum size of 1 inch across. It has tentacles that stretch out in every direction. Now, if you come close to this jellyfish, it'll pull all these tentacles in toward its body before rapidly swimming away to avoid danger. Yes, you are dangerous. The crocodile jelly is extremely rare. You won't see it very often. You might need to borrow that deep-sea diving robot I mentioned earlier. While worms and jellyfish might seem quite harmless, this isn't the case with the Pacific viperfish. Ooh. This creature is equipped with a noticeably big mouth, like me, and the needle-like teeth inside are key to its hunting strategy. Pacific viperfish live at around 5,000 feet below the ocean surface, but they're among those numerous marine animals that migrate each night from the ocean depths toward shallower waters to dine. What's on the menu for dinner tonight? Lots of small fish and shrimp. The creature can grow up to 12 inches in length. Its 2 front fangs, which stick up from the fish's bottom jaw past its own eyes, are especially dramatic. When the fish unhinges its jaw, its mouth can open wide enough to engulf smaller animals, and the teeth form a cage to prevent an escape. Now, have you ever seen an underwater creature that looks like a strawberry? Trust me, it does exist. Just look at these dots on the strawberry squid. The creature has a big eye and a smaller one. You might think this unconventional pairing would be awkward and uncomfortable, but it's actually the opposite. The big left eye looks upward. It spots shadows cast by other animals in the dimly lit waters above. The eye's tubular shape helps it collect as much light as possible. On the other side of the squid's head, you can see its right eye. It's small and looks downward. This eye searches for flashes of bioluminescence produced by animals lurking in the darker waters below. Now, bioluminescence means the production and emission of light by living organisms. By the way, the squid has a nickname. And no, it's not squiggy, although that's a great one. It's known as the cockeyed squid. This is simply due to the remarkable difference in size between its two eyes. I think I like squiggy better, and so it goes. Since light doesn't reach the deep sea, the strawberry squid's body actually looks black. This helps the creature hide from enemies, such as sharks and dolphins. In general, the strawberry squid grows to a length of 5 inches. It typically lives around 3,000 feet below the surface, but floats to shallower waters at night. Now, the feather star is a marine creature without a backbone, but with feather-like arms that radiate from the center of its body. These creatures first appeared around 200 million years ago. Related to sea stars, they look like a flower, but if you approach them, they'll quickly swim away. But not all feather stars can swim. Many species can only crawl along the bottom of the seafloor. Like some of the other deep-sea creatures we've looked at, the feather star can adapt to its surroundings. It has a creepy ability to shed its arms, the same way some lizards can shed their tails. This also helps them escape from their enemies. Feather stars live all across the globe, from the equator to the poles, from the shallow waters on top of reefs to the deep, deep sea. Now, given that we're dealing with mysterious creatures, the name of this one is quite fitting. The swift vampire squid should be the official symbol of life in the deep sea. The animal has a dark red body, huge blue eyes, and a cloak-like web that stretches between its 8 arms. This, along with its name, may suggest that the creature is some form of a terrifying hunter. In reality, though, the vampire squid is a soft-bodied, timid creature, about the size, shape, and color of a football. It grows to roughly 12 inches in length and lives 3,000 feet below the waves. There's almost no oxygen there, but also relatively few predators. I think I'll need to decompress from this one.